And good morning to another Evolve to Win show with Heather and Paul. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Hope you had a great weekend.
Yeah, and today's President's Day. I hope all of you are really enjoying your day off, if you're taking one off, and those of you who are working, probably getting a lot done because it's a holiday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so in our show today, we want to talk to you about the two different ways that there are to really get your point across. And there is one way of doing it that has to do with using logic, and another way of doing it, telling stories. And here's one thing we know for certain. Stories sell. If you're using your left brain logic to try to convey a point, a leadership point, you're probably going to put people to sleep.
Yeah, and most leaders, I would say most, definitely your top leaders use stories all the time, but most leaders do not take the time to figure out their idea and to put it in a story that they can sell, that it's easy to convey and sell their idea.
You're right, because it does take time. It does take effort to really look for and find the stories that truly prove your points and bring them home. We know that we are emotionally thinking beings, right? So if you want to get somebody to act, you've got to reach their emotion, and you don't reach emotion through logic. And so you're right. I think the best of the best leaders have used stories to really sell their position, sell their point, sell their vision. And I think one of the challenges is you're so busy right now. And as a leader, your role really is to develop and grow the people around you. And the best way to do that, if you want to move somebody into action, is to sell them your idea through story. Because here's what happens if you're not doing that.
Tell me.
There's a good chance if you're not using stories to make your point, people are not going to be emotionally engaged, and they're not going to change. They're not going to grow as fast as they can grow. So what I'd like to do is give a real life example. So,
all right, so let's do this.
So we're going to here's a little case study for you. We're going to show you two different ways. And hopefully you'll make it through the first way, which is going to be the less exciting, less engaging, still filled with valuable content, but make it through to the end, because I'm going to share a story with you that when I first heard about it brought me to tears. And since we've shared it over time, I've seen many grown men cry too, because it's just a really inspiring story.
That's what we were going to do. We're going to role play the one way that a leader would, most leaders, actually come in with an idea. So they come up with an idea, they walk into a meeting, they call a meeting, they walk into the meeting, and then they are going to share this to them. And how do they normally do it? So why don't we do that?
So let's give an example of a leader who's facing some disengagement right now with team members, and they're really trying to get people on board with this whole idea of growing and developing and moving forward in their world. So I come in and we're going to have a team meeting, and I would say something to the group like, I'll do it for you directly, yeah. Right? So Paul, when you think about your situation currently, I want you to really recognize that the number one key to your success is the environment that you put yourself in.
Okay.
Right? So the people who you surround yourself with are going to have the single biggest impact on whether or not you are growing and developing. So I want you to think about the people you surround yourself with right now. Are they really pulling you forward, and are they pushing you to excel and be your best? Or do you think at times maybe they're dragging you down?
That's a good point. Let me see. Well, I would say that, yes, I have people around me that definitely pull me forward, and I do have some people that can sometimes bring me down a little bit as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And so you recognize that, we all have ups and downs. And when you get into a place of just, not feeling good or doubting yourself, we're going through a lot of change in our organization right now. So you're going to go through slumps, right?
Yep.
Who you surround yourself with is really important, because it's really difficult to get yourself out of a slump all by yourself.
Okay. And so just going off of outside of the role play, mm-hmm. I feel like that we're having a conversation, but it's just like there's no emotion to it. There's nothing that's really engaging me or just kind of telling me mm-hmm. what I should be looking for, or
So does it make logical sense though to you?
Totally.
Yeah. So you get the point, but there's a disconnect in that there's nothing that's pulling you from emotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So if we just had that meeting And as a leader, I'm sharing with in a one-on-one or sharing in a group setting, this whole concept of your environment is the key to your success. Everybody's going to buy into that. We know this is true, but I haven't really struck a chord, and chances are really good I'm not going to see much of a shift in Paul's levels of engagement, or he's probably not going to run home and do anything about the environment that he's put himself in. And so that is a very typical way that a leader might go into a meeting and present for 5 or 10 minutes on some topic.
Yeah, and I think too that if you were to do exactly what you just did, the thing that you were missing at the end was an action item.
Absolutely.
And so putting something attached to it where I would say, okay, so I get what you're saying, but what does this really mean to me? So asking me questions about who are those people that are important to me in my environment and the ones that possibly could be a negative impact on me, and what are the next steps? So that would be the logical way of doing it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And here's the reality. If I had started engaging you and asking you questions about what is the impact of being in an environment or surrounding yourself with those people who are maybe negative, you would have begun to fill in your own story. That actually is getting really close to how we really truly inspire and persuade people through story. So what I did is I stopped short on purpose, and I gave a very left brain logical sort of argument that I think everybody would technically buy into, and they'd shake their heads. And at the end of the meeting, they'd probably say, yeah, that was a great meeting and that was a great point. And I really need to look at my environment. But the reality is, without touching emotion, you can't guarantee action. So if I wanted to really engage you and get you in a place where you started thinking for yourself how you might do it, I need to go for emotion. And we do that through storytelling, right?
Right.
So let's just do that. So I'm gonna do this again, where I'm going to just come into this meeting, and instead of talking very logically about the point I'm making, I'm going to use story. So this is take 2, right?
And God, I just going to all of these meetings it's just so much. Like I have a meeting, and now I have another meeting, and I have another meeting. Oh, and then I'm going to go to your meeting, and you're going to tell me something that I probably know already, or maybe I think
wants
I
a
know.
Piece of you.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
how do you make a meeting more interesting?
With story.
Okay.
It's funny that you asked that. Yeah. So we're going to use story. So let me just share with you. There was this girl named Haley. And she was just headed from middle school into high school, and she was a volleyball player. Mm-hmm. And all of her friends were volleyball players. And so they spent the summer between middle school and high school just practicing every day. They just had a volleyball going at all times. When she got to high school and got to the tryouts for volleyball, she found out that in Southwest Florida, if you don't know this, it's extremely competitive. It is extremely competitive and difficult to make the high school volleyball team. Mm-hmm. So they had 2 days worth of tryouts. And during these 2 days, Haley gave it her best. She gave everything that she had. But as it turns out, she didn't give enough, and she didn't make the team. And you got to know that Haley was absolutely devastated when she didn't make the team, in part because all of her friends did. So this group of girls that was really her entire support system in high school, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about, put yourself back in the day of your freshman year of high school, you had some friends that meant everything to you.
Sure.
Well, when she didn't make the team, at first her friends were consoling her and, telling her how sorry they felt. But, she went home and she felt absolutely lost, because you think about it, her identity was completely tied up in being a volleyball player and being with this group. Mm-hmm. So what happened very shortly thereafter is that her group of friends continued to practice and play volleyball with their new teammates. And so she felt completely left out, completely alone. And it was such a tough time for her, this transition into high school to begin with, trying to figure out who she was. But it was like everything got ripped from her. She had no idea. So she went into a serious depression. I mean, she was crying at nights. She was talking to her parents about it, didn't know what she wanted to do. So imagine that she's now in a place brand new for her, feels like she's completely alienated from her friends. She did have another classmate, though, who said, hey, why don't you come out for cross-country practice? And she thought about it and she thought, oh my God, I'm not a runner. Like the only running she had ever done is just very short distances on the volleyball court. But she was just vulnerable enough and feeling lost enough that she was going to grab for anything. So she agreed to go to this cross country practice. And during this practice, their very first training run of the year, she was running with the group and very, very quickly was completely out of breath and had to go down to a walk. Mm-hmm. And it was a walk, jog, walk, jog, walk, jog. So you got to believe Haley was feeling like she just made such a huge mistake. I mean, she was already so embarrassed and feeling so bad about herself that she didn't make the volleyball team. Now she goes out for cross country and she feels like the biggest loser. Like her self-talk was going on and she was like, oh my God, I suck. I'm terrible. Why did I even think I could do this? I don't fit anywhere. I mean, it was literally like she was just beating herself up so bad. Now, she had fallen so far behind on that very first run that she saw the whole team standing there as she was rounding that last corner to keep, making it to the end. So her embarrassment was at an all-time high. She was doing everything she could to fight back the tears and not show them how embarrassed she was and what a failure she felt like. And she felt like she let the team down and like, this is one more thing I'm not good at. And next thing you know, she starts to hear this cheering and this crowd and all this noise. And she didn't really know what was going on. Next thing you know, she recognizes they're cheering her on and they're saying, you got this, Haley, you can do this. And they're clapping and they're yelling for her. And she all of a sudden starts crying because she's like, she was already trying to hold back the tears, but she was completely choked up like, oh my God, they're cheering me on. And next thing you know, a few of them run back to her and run in with her. And she's like a slobbering mess now. She's just crying and crying. Yeah. Because she's feeling that love and that support and that group, that team, right? And so they're yelling that we got this, we got this. And when she comes in, she's like wiping the tears away. She's now super embarrassed. And she's just apologizing. You guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I let you down. You didn't have to wait for me or run with me. And they were like, Haley, you're part of our team. We're one team and we'll do this together. And she was so completely taken aback. These are people she didn't even know, not like her friends she'd grown up with and spent all this time with. She's got this whole brand new group of people who are completely embracing her and telling her that she's worthy of being on that team. Mm-hmm. So in that moment, she felt like she could do this. She felt like she belonged. So even if she couldn't physically do it, she knew that if she worked hard enough, she could probably pull this off and she could do it, right? Mm-hmm. So fast forward, it was probably, she completed every run. She did join the team and she completed every run that she did that year. And she didn't break any records other than her own. So she kept doing a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So she was getting personal bests as she was running, right? Right. Now, by the end of Haley's senior year, this is what's so incredible about the story. If it's not incredible enough what those kids did to encourage her and get her going and make her feel like she belonged, she worked so hard. She practiced so much. She was not the most physically talented athlete that they had, not by a long shot, but she worked so stinking hard that her senior year, she broke the record for the 3.1 mile run. And as far as I know, that record still stands today. So I ask you this question, what was it, do you think, that made Haley break that record?
I think it was the support of her team.
So it's amazing, isn't it, that it was just what that team did for her, right? The environment that she was surrounded by, the fact that those kids accepted her when she didn't even accept herself, right? Yeah. And you think about how powerful that is. You think about how powerful it is, the environment that you're surrounded by. Her success was not her own. She didn't do it for her. She did it for her team. So I just ask you this, when you look around you and you look at your teammates here, you look at your team at home, your environment, mm-hmm. Who are those who really, really boost you up? Who are those who are the ones who are cheering you on just the way they did for Haley, even if she wasn't doing well at the time, even if you're in a slump, who are the ones who still push you to excel and to get better? those are the people who can bring you out of any slump that you're in. These are the people who are going to make you want to be better, work harder, tap into your potential.
Wow. So that is a story that is much different from, or a presentation of much different from how just the logical side of what, just surrounding yourself, the environment that you should be in, right?
Yeah.
And creating a story that actually connects emotion to it, and so much more entertaining to listen to, so much more impactful. You got emotionally involved in it.
Yeah.
I've heard the story many times, so I'm not as, I wasn't getting as emotional, but anytime that we've told that story before, we've had an incredible impact on people. But they get it. You get it at such a deeper level, because I was putting even though I've heard this story many times, I was putting myself in her position, or I was thinking about maybe a nephew or a niece or whatever that I have that, that I could identify with. And then it made me start to think like, well, I could be doing so much better. What am I surrounding myself with people who are behind me 100%, or do I have people that aren't necessarily out for my best, Yeah. So it made me really start to think about different aspects of my life and who I'm surrounding myself with.
So that's the greatest thing about story, is that that transports you at some level. And I don't know, those of you who are watching, did you feel that same feeling? Did you remember back to a time when you were younger and maybe feeling like an outsider for whatever reason? I mean, don't we all? Or maybe that was just me. But I totally relate to Haley. And when I first heard that story, I was just crying and crying, thinking, oh my God, that's the most inspirational story. And stories absolutely have the ability to transport us, and it makes us think and connect, like, how does this, how is this similar to my situation? So that's just, it's an example, two different ways to tell the exact same message, and you get to choose, which one of those two ways was inspiring for you. Now, at the end of that story, I wouldn't have just stopped there. We would have done a little bit of reflection and, let's talk about what you could do with your environment and what would you need to get a more positive experience. And we would have done some action steps and that kind of thing. But, in 5 minutes time or so, you tell a story that has the kind of impact where people kind of remember it, and they remember how it made them feel. And remember, we're emotional human beings, and we take action based on the emotion that we feel. So, you come up with a great story, and look, these stories are everywhere.
Yeah. And, and what I started thinking about when you were telling me the story is, boy, this is so much different from just just dumping information into my lap and having me just kind of sort it out myself. Even though you asked me questions on the first way that you presented it, the logical way, the story just makes it lands so much better. It makes such more of an impact because it was enjoyable to listen to. And I didn't feel like somebody was talking to me. It felt like there was that third party going on that we both were participating in.
Yeah.
So it was cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate y'all tuning in for this episode of Evolve to Win. And please let us know any tactics that you have for storytelling and what works and what doesn't work for you. But one thing that we know for certain is that stories sell. And so if you've got a major change initiative that you're going through right now in your organization, or you're just trying to get somebody over the hump and get someone to make a personal change, really consider tapping into your arsenal of stories and prove the point, prove the lesson through story. You're going to connect at a whole deeper level.
Yes.
All right.
Good job.
Share it if you liked it. And you guys have an awesome week.
Bye now.